Reading from the book of 1 Samuel. And I'm going to give you a chance if you want to pick up your Bible and turn to chapter 17 of 1 Samuel, because I'm going to be reading just about the whole chapter, if you'd like to follow along with me. It is a lengthy chapter, but I would go so far as to say that everyone here is familiar with the content of 1 Samuel chapter 17. Beginning to read at verse 1. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shochoh, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shochoh and Ezekiah in Ephraim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched in the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had a helmet on his head of brass, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of his coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and targets of brass between his shoulders, and the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head was weight 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are you come out to set your army in battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you. Let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then ye shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of that Ephraimite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. And he had 8 sons. And the man went out from them and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and the next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. And David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near every morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp of thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Jesse said, David, go check on your brothers at the battlefield, see how they're doing. Verse 19. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And he talked with them. Behold, there came the champion of the Philistines of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the army of the Philistines, and spake to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man that cometh up? surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be to the man that killeth him. And Eliab the eldest brother heard when he spake unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and he spake after the same manner, and the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spoke, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, the king, David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with the Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep. And there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass on his head, and also armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off. And he took his staff in his hand, and he chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew nearer to David. And the man that bare his shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh to the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of the hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into my hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcass of the host of the Philistine this day to the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, and that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all the assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew to meet David, that David hastened, ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand into his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone stunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And the Philistines saw their champion was dead, and fled. And the men of Israel of Judah arose and shouted, and pursued the Philistines till they cometh out of the valley unto the gates of Ekron, and wounded of the Philistines. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way of Sharaim unto Gath, unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put his armor in his tent. Drawing your attention back to the question that David asked. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 29. Is there not a cause? This morning, with the help of the Lord, I'll be preaching that there is a cause. As long as the Israelites were complacent in their fear, they were defeated. The Philistines on one side of the valley shouting torments, arrayed as an army. Yet one man among them in significant prominence became the focal point of their fear. When Goliath would come and shout his curses, defying the army of Israel, defying the God who was the defense of Israel, mocking them in their fear, the Israelites cowering, saying, oh, we're here, we're in a defensive posture. They're not going to come across that valley. They're content to send Goliath to taunt us. We're content to sit here in defense and take it. As long as they were complacent in their fear, as long as they maintained a defensive posture, they were defeated. They were defeated. Against the enemy that generations ago God had told them to go in and possess the land, they sat defeated. Not accomplishing God's will for their lives. Not experiencing the victory of faith in God. They dared not shift their position. They were in a stalemate. They were sitting there saying, somebody can do something, but nobody did anything. Brother and sister, when there's a stalemate, when there's a spiritual stalemate in your life, the devil is the one that stands victorious in that battle. When you've given up, when you said, I'm no longer going to fight this battle, but I'm going to dig in that I might remain in this position, hopefully not lose anything more than what I've lost, but at this point I cannot go any further because the battle is arrayed against me. I will stay here unmoved, rather than advancing forward as God had called me to. I will stay here and hope that the enemy doesn't make the first advance. David recognized the situation that he encountered not as one of military strategy. You read about David coming down and finding them all dug in trenches. You read about David coming down and finding them getting up every day and getting their battle armor on and going down forward. And then here would come Goliath and start taunting them from the other side of the valley. And they'd say, well, they're still doing that, so we'll just still do this. They had already... You can read the story about how David came down and saw his brothers, and they would get their armor on every day. They would get up out of the trenches. They would array themselves to go down to the battle. But then they would get down to the battlefield. Goliath would stand there, begin taunting them, and say, oh, that's how they want to fight against us. Well, just go back. We'll just go back. Why didn't they go forward? Why didn't that army refuse to accept the challenge of Goliath and say, no, we're going to come out to you as the army of God. We're going to defeat you and the rest of you. It doesn't matter if you say, let's do this one-on-one. We're not accepting those terms. We're going to accept only the terms of victory, but none of them would do anything. None of them would do anything. Was there one among them that would say, oh, look what the king has promised to the one. The king himself would not go down. No, there wasn't. Until this young man came down. This young man who had a reputation of serving God. This young man who knew what it meant to be faithful to God in hardships. This young man went down there and said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? He has no part of the promises of God. He has no part of the covenants of God. He's just coming down to make things hard for us. Who is he to defy the armies of the living God? Cursing us by his gods. His gods are nothing. David recognized it as a situation not of one of military strategy, but one of faithfulness to God. And he tried to encourage the rest of them. The armies of the living God, that's who we are. Not just the armies of Israel, the armies of the living God. He used it a couple of times before he even went down into that valley with Goliath himself. Who is he to defy the armies of the living God? Yeah, Saul might be the king, but you're not the armies of Saul. Yeah, Israel might be our nation, but you're not the armies of Israel. This is the army of the living God. God is not defeated. We will not be defeated. Let's go over there and take them out. But none of them did anything. They said a defensive posture is good enough for us. As long as they're not advancing, we don't have to take any risks. Complacency kills. Complacency kills. There is a cause in our life. In each one of our lives, there is a purpose that we must not find complacency in pursuing. When we recognize that our cause is not worldly, then we will realize that we do not have to fight it by worldly means. We don't have to fight it by the world's rules. We can look across the valley at the army of the Philistines and they're one coming against us. We say, I know all of the troubles that the world has. And now I see this battle that I'm facing. And the world says that the battle has to be fought that way. No, because the world doesn't know who I'm fighting for. That's right. You send one guy over here, we'll send one guy over there. They can fight it out. That's how we're going to do this battle. Israel didn't have to accept those terms, and we don't have to accept the world's terms to gain our victory through Jesus in this life. But what we cannot do is what Israel did and just sit back and say, I'm not going to do anything. The battle's there. I've got problems with this relationship. I've got problems with this money. I've got problems with this job. I've got problems with these people coming again. I've got all of these problems. There they are. Let me take my seat. The problems will still be there. Problems will still be there. I've gotten used to the taunting. Okay, I've gotten used, to even being uncomfortable with the situations that I've got to face, but I've gotten used to going through it. Okay, so I'm used to it. I can just hold down in the defensive position. Hopefully somebody will come through and give me a breakthrough. That's what every single member, soldier in that army was hoping for. Somebody come give us the breakthrough. Somebody come give us the breakthrough. What is it going to take for me to get a breakthrough in this battle? I've not put my finger on any specific battle, but we all have them that we face. The Bible tells us that there is no temptation, there is no trial, there is no test taken you, but such as is common to man. We can all relate to having to go through struggles, battles, people coming against us, hardships. There is no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able. God is faithful. Goliath might be 13 feet high. Goliath might have that spear. Goliath might have that sword. But God is faithful, not to suffer you to be tempted above that you are able. If Goliath's the one yelling at you, Goliath's the one that's going down. Every battle that you face, every temptation that comes against you is one that God says right here, 1 Corinthians 10:13, that you are able. That you are able to overcome. Will with the temptation also make a way of escape that you may be able to bear it. In the case of escaping Goliath, that escape was found when his head was cut off. We all face struggles in life that are common to life. Finances and relationships and work and opposition and bad feelings. Sickness. Some things that are serious. But we must do as David did when the thousands were arrayed on the other side of the valley and that one was standing there taunting. It's not a worldly problem. It's not a worldly problem. This is not a military strategy that we have to sit down and go to the sandboard, and you see it in movies and stuff how the generals would be gathered around the sandboard and they've got the army set up on this side and they've got some tanks laid out on this side and they kind of push them across the board with sticks to show how they're going to move into battle. That's not what the problem is. It's a spiritual problem. Goliath, standing there in the valley, defying the armies of Israel, was not a military problem. It was a spiritual problem. The victory was accomplished in it by faith in God. That's how the victory is accomplished in every battle we face as a Christian. By faith in God. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Every battle that we face as a Christian, before we came to God, they were battles. Some we'd pedal through, some we'd lose. Every once in a while, a situation would change and we might come out on the better side of one. But every battle we faced before Christ was our own. I'm a sinner in a fallen world of sinners, and everything that comes against me is my due. Jesus came to deliver us from that. Jesus came. He died upon the cross, which was not his due, that we could have the victory that was not ours to claim, but through him. And he said, in this world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And so when we face a battle, when we face circumstances, we don't sit back like the Israelites and say, who's going to get a cavalry troop together and go out there and fight the Philistines? Who's going to be the one to volunteer to go down there with a sword and fight Goliath? Can we get some weapons of siege and kind of surround their army? Trying to come up with a military strategy against the Philistines was not going to win the battle for them. Trying to come up with a worldly solution to our battles is not going to win the victory for us. We can sit back and we can say, I need more money to win this battle. I need more money to win this battle. And until I get more money, I can't have victory. So what do? We put our heart, our soul, and our mind into money. And then, when we're looking for money, I tell you this is an absolute truth of life. When you're looking for money, there's never enough. You could have a bill that's $99. You find a $100 bill laying on the ground. You go and pay it, you got $1 left over. Now you say, well, I've got a little bit left over. Let me go buy a Happy Meal for $4. Now I need $3. And the whole cycle just starts over again. When you're looking for money, there's never enough.
That's right.
But you can sit back and say, I'm not going to have victory until I've got enough money to get through this battle. You can sit back and say, my battle has to do with the circumstances of life that I'm sitting in, and so I need a better opportunity. And wait for a better opportunity. And even as we were preaching over the past couple of weeks about no time to waste, there is no better opportunity. When you're called to do something of God, if you're called to be faithful to God, if you're called to live right for God, which is the soul, which is the center of every purpose of the callings of God, is to live for Him, there is no better opportunity. A better opportunity than right now, this very moment, will not come. You can look back and say, it would have been good for me if I got in it then. You can look at the forward and say, it would be good for me if something else comes along to bring me in. But right now is the best and the only promised opportunity that we have. We can't sit back and say, I'm not going to win this battle until I get a better opportunity. So I might as well just wait for that opportunity to come along. That's what all of Israel was doing. That's what they were saying. We're not going to win this battle until somebody volunteers to fight Goliath. Who's going to volunteer to fight Goliath? Not me. Who's going to fall? I don't know. Maybe some guys over there in that battalion will volunteer to fight Goliath. Maybe their commander over there has somebody that they're training kind of behind the scenes. They haven't brought him forward yet, so we're just going to wait and see what happens. It's not going to happen. David said the same thing about the weapons of this world that he was offered when he was given Saul's helmet and armor and sword. He said, I haven't proven these things. Guess what? How many of us can say that we've proven what it's like to have enough money? We haven't proven it. So how do we know it'll work when we've got it? We haven't proven it. David said, I haven't proved these things. Yeah, everybody tells me I need a sword. Yeah, everybody tells me I need armor. Everybody tells me I need a helmet. Everybody tells me I need money. Everybody tells me I need a better opportunity. Everybody tells me that somebody else needs to come in and do something for me. But I haven't proven those things. I haven't proven that I can win a battle if I've got enough money. I haven't proven that I can win a battle if I've got a better opportunity. I haven't proven that I can win a battle if somebody else comes through for me. But I'll tell you what Pastor Watson, standing up here before you in this pulpit, can tell you right now. I've proven that I can win a battle if I am faithful to God.
That's right.
Amen.
There is a cause to rise up out of complacency. There is a cause to rise above the status quo and to say what everybody says I need to win this, that's not what it's going to take. Plenty of soldiers over there have swords. They're not going out to battle. Plenty of soldiers over there have armor. They're not going out to battle. I don't have any of that. And you say, but Pastor, David did use a sling and a stone. Isn't that worldly means? David used what he had on him when God said, now.
That's right.
If God is looking at you and saying, now, start living for me, then start living for God with what you got, and what you got is what you need, because it's not the sling, it's not the stone, it's not the staff, it's God.
That's right.
And faith in Him. Saying, yes, I'll go down out into that valley. I don't care if it's just a sling, a little strap of leather, and some stones that I picked up out of the brook. I'll go down out into that valley because God said He gives me the victory. And here comes Goliath with a spear and a sword, but I come to you in the name of the Lord.
That's right.
Who are your gods? You curse me by your gods. That's nothing. A spear and a sword, that's nothing. I'm not going to be complacent. I'm not going to sit back in defense. There is a cause to rise up in righteousness and to live for God. To say it doesn't matter what the world is holding against me. It doesn't matter what the world is bringing against me. It doesn't matter what the world says I need to have in order to do this, because the world's not doing it, so I don't need what they have. I'm going to live for God by what God has given me, by what I have in Him right now. I've got faith in Him because I believed on Him unto salvation. And I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. I can live right. I don't need more of what the world says I need. All I need is to use what I've got in God. There is a cause, brothers and sisters. There is a cause. That cause is righteousness. That cause is holiness. That cause is what the world comes out and defies. That cause is what the world comes out and curses. That cause is what the world comes out and says, you can't do that, or if you do have it, you better do it this way. You see, I'm not accepting the terms of the world. I'm going to live for God. I'm going to live for God. And it's not going to take anything more than what He has already provided. I'm not going to sit back and wait for more money. I'm not going to sit back and wait for a better opportunity. I'm not going to sit back and wait for that one that I'm counting on to come through for me. It's not going to happen. Live for God. There is a cause. The armies of Israel can sit back and say, this is what the king has promised. The world can sit back and say, sure is nice for people who can live a clean life. All the while, they're not doing it. And those that try to live, quote unquote, a clean life, the world will either discourage them or say that they got to do it the world's way. It's not about the quote unquote clean life by worldly standards. David in the Psalms asked the question, who shall ascend? Who shall ascend into heaven, into the presence of God, into His courts, into His holy hill? Who shall ascend? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart. Righteousness, living right, is the cause. Brother Sutherland, if you come to the keyboard. And as we bow our heads and close our eyes in reverence to God out of respect for those who are gathered here together this evening, brother and sister, there is a cause. Each one of us know that cause. Each one of us faced a giant or a battle that is arrayed against us to oppose us in that cause. And each one of us, by faith in God, has what it takes to knock down that giant and to cut off his head. And if we act by faith in God, rather than waiting or rather than expecting or rather than trying to gain the things of this world, we will have the victory in that cause. As we pray this morning, let it be our prayer that by faith we are strengthened and that through God we find the victory that He has won. God bless you as you pray this morning.